To a lot of women in the room actually, because being a person of colour, obviously there's lots of things that we go through naturally that I think we're just taught and we have to do it, right? So being a caregiver and all of those things, naturally I kind of stepped into that role at about 6 years old. My parent was an addict, and my other parent was working all the time, so she was emotionally unavailable, so no one was being a parent in my household, so I took that responsibility on and developed I like to call it toxic masculine ways of living. So my whole life I lived in force. I was just pushing forward all of the time, and I wanted to be a dancer and a performer, and I did get to do that, but I feel like that was always my ego leading me. And on a number of occasions things just kept going wrong, and then between the ages of 12 to 17 I had 11 members of my family die just back to back, because life, right? There's no other reason. We're ethnic, we've got big families, right? And I just kept building up this armour and this resilience all of the time, but it was just toxic, and I physically couldn't hold the weight of the responsibility, the trauma, the suppression of emotions. I was carrying everyone else's emotions because I didn't want them to feel the pain that I was feeling all the time. And everyone outwardly would think I was really confident because I was a performer and I was out there and doing all the things, but it was all ego and it was not real. So then when the pandemic hit, first time in my life I had to stop, and I felt everything, and it was like a tsunami of emotions. I feel like I'd been suicidal at quite a few times in my life, but again, I just kept going, because if I go, what would they all do without me? Because it's then another death they've got to go through, right? So that was one of the reasons why I kept pushing forwards. But in the pandemic, I had the chance to actually sit with how I was feeling, and I had IBS chronically my whole life throughout that time, not realising that what you feel in your body is the materialisation of what you're feeling in your emotions. So I really had to sit with that and work through it, and I did like breathwork exercises, meditations, and they're all things that I was doing loosely but not really sitting with and understanding. So I just got pen and paper out. I was too much of a toxic person to actually talk about my feelings to someone else, so I just sat there with a journal, worked through it all, and first time in my life ever, I just allowed myself to feel fully. My armour melted off, and as a result of that, just started to speak about how I was feeling. So kind of similar really, I just one day was like, I started writing blogs because I had nothing else to do, and then I did my masters again, because what do you do when you're a dancer and you can't dance? You just do something, right? And then I started to look at all of my other skills that I had, which was connecting with people, because I'd been a dancer and dance teacher my whole life, so I'd always been talking about, keep going, do it for you, but I wasn't really living that really deeply inside. So for the first time in my life, I allowed myself to let that soul lead, and then I dropped the armour, and now I'm vulnerable and honest, and I cry in front of people. And I didn't cry for 20 years, like in front of anyone, but I'd cry myself to sleep every night, because I felt like being strong was my badge of honour, and I loved that about myself. And I was like, we just get through it, we do it because we have to do it. And it was just toxic. So allowing myself to feel and heal allowed me to step into this person that I am now. And that's really my kind of story for everyone, is just like, you have to just, like, if you're not the embodiment of what you stand for, like my thing about like self-love for me is self-acceptance plus self-respect, right? So if you don't do that first for you, the love you give outwardly is conditional, and that for me is just such a really important thing that I feel like, especially as women of colour, we just don't take. That's just something that we have to be a caregiver, we have to do that, we have to be supporting of everyone else. We're just giving all the time but not pouring back into ourselves. So like my bit of advice there for you is like, feel your feelings and be honest about it. Like we just bottle it all up, but it's for who, right? You don't get a badge at the end of life. Like, God don't pat you on the back and say, well done for being the strongest person alive, right? So it's just like, do you know? So now it is that. It's like, ask for help, accept help, because you don't get a badge for it, So that's really my thing now.
Thank you.